want to come back to this idea of technology affecting how we perceive music and what is relevant in music, and how the difference between classical music or art music and other idioms such as folk music or popular music is that classical music is sort of scientifically derived or has very firm philosophical underpinnings that reflect the dominant sort of philosophical forefront of culture at a given time. So we're going to go back not too far, not 40,000 years, because we don't have a clue. Joseph Campbell makes a couple guesses at what they were thinking 40,000 years ago with the cave paintings and some of the music they were doing. You can read about it in The Masks of God, but that's a very long book, and he has a lot of conjecture, but I find it interesting and fascinating. But Pythagoras, 500 BC-ish, circa, of course, we give him the tradition of coming up with the Pythagorean tuning system, which is probably Persian. Then we fast forward. The oldest song we have from Greek culture is from the epitaph of Sekalos, and down below is a link to listening to the song. It was written as an epitaph on a cylinder stele, and people have figured out what it said. It had Greek notation, which is they had inflections over the letters and the words. They can't figure out the rhythms yet. But another cool thing about the epitaph of Sekalos, the song on it is predominantly pentatonic. If we look at the Greeks closer, so they had 7 notes for 7 planets. And there were also 7 modes. And the modes, they've been translated correctly and incorrectly. What they're commonly known as contemporaneously is Ionian is the major mode. That's what we think of as a major scale, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Then there's Dorian, which is basically starting on re. Re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, re. Then there's Phrygian, which is starting on mi, and I think of Phrygian as sort of the flamenco. Dum, bum, 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 bum. Then there's Lydian. Then there's Mixolydian. Then there's Aeolian, Locrian, and then we're back to Ionian. Each mode is traditionally thought of as from a different region in Greece, and they were misinterpreted in the Middle Ages into the church modes. And there were more than the 7 modes in the church modes. They had hypo modes, and that has to do with a reciting tone. 2 things representing the philosophy of the time. Chant music is meant to get lost in, as if you're in a timeless state in the presence of a deity or God. That's why it's so long. It's not linear. It doesn't have a point. The point is that you're lost in eternity, bearing witness to the greatness of these cathedrals. The second thing that I think is cool is I read in an architectural book printed in the 70s that one of the reasons we have chant is it was a natural amplification system. So if you think about these ancient cathedrals, they held thousands of people, and a priest has to give a sermon, and it's really hard to hear over thousands of people, even just general rustling. And so the reciting tone is actually a tone that is amplified by the natural acoustic of the cathedral. So if the cathedral had a certain fundamental, you could ride one of the overtones of that cathedral and your voice would naturally be amplified. You can hear this in any gym. If you just go and hum in a gym and you find the pitch, one of them will be way louder. And I think it's an awesome explanation for sort of why chant has the sound it does, not just the form it does. The form has to do with being lost in God. The sound has to do with the physical, acoustical characteristics of the site. And so much of what we'll also find as we go forward in history is not only the physical characteristics of the site matter, but also the acoustical characteristics of the instrument, and they play back and forth.